So today I have Jacob Sedmak from Sedmak Custom Contracting. Jacob's up in the Hudson River Valley, New York. He is a sawyer, and I'm gonna put him in a box and call him a mobile sawyer. Although I know he doesn't always do mobile sawing. But that's kind of one of the reasons I wanted to bring him on is he's got sawmills on wheels. So Jacob, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming.
Thank you, Shannon.
So let's talk a little bit because you're a woodworker and you have like woodworking and you actually make things, but then also got into sawing up logs and things like that. So can you tell us a little bit about your origin story and exactly how you got started in this and kind of up until what your company does today?
Yeah, so my wife and I grew up in Pennsylvania, northwest Pennsylvania. And when I was a little kid, um, my dad was in the woodworking, my grandfather was in the woodworking. I remember going to little jobs with them when I was real small. And in the summers, when I got a little bit older, I worked for a sawyer, kind of part time, not even officially because I was so young, but I thought it was the most fascinating thing. He had a mobile sawmill. He would bring it on our property, my dad's property. He'd have some logs cut up to use for buildings and siding and whatnot. And I thought it was the coolest thing. So since we got married, my wife and I, we always talked about getting a sawmill. It never happened. And finally, we pulled that plug about 6 years ago. And ever since then, we've just been very busy.
No, but
Before we had the sawmill, we had a wood shop set up, and we did a lot of um, custom projects, tables, and nothing real large or real ornate or delicate, but um, just a lot of various projects for people in the area. Um, and I slowly I wanted to work toward getting to the actual source of the woodworking, which in my mind was the mobile or was the milling
right,
aspect of it.
sure, yeah, it seems to be kind of a common sentiment. So do you
Yeah.
still do any of the woodworking side of your business today, or is it all sawing now?
We haven't for the last since we started, but
No time.
yeah. So the original goal of getting into the mobile sawmill work was we would have an unlimited source of wood for us to work with, and we could do anything we wanted with it. Any projects that we could dream up, we would have a source of wood because we would have no. Um, but since we started, we have just been so incredibly busy. We we haven't had time to do any projects for ourselves.
Well, you're
So
you're you're building a retirement stash. Just look at it that way, I suppose.
yeah, we save little pieces here and there, and things that I think are unique and that I would eventually like to use. We squirrel away.
Right. So
Just
I'm
this winter. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
no, please continue.
I was gonna say just this winter because of not wanting to work out in the cold, because we'll do mobile work straight through.
Yeah.
And this winter we're getting set up with our wood shop again in an old barn basement, old bank barn.
Nice.
So we still had all the tools, but we're just slowly setting everything up to use again.
Sure. Yeah. Well, it's been on hiatus for a while. Sometimes can take a little bit of time. It's interesting though. Like even during like all of the COVID pandemic and everything, you were still busy going to people and cutting down trees. I mean, I guess yeah. I mean, you're outside. They stay in the house. I guess there's really nothing holding that up, right?
No, most I would say 90% of our jobs, it would be myself and a helper I'd bring,
Mm-hmm.
and it would be just us, either out in a field or in somebody's large yard, kind of off on our own cutting wood.
Yeah. No, that's
So
that's kind of nice.
we're uh, we're registered, licensed through the state as agricultural business. So technically, we were considered essential.
Right.
So we could pull on that if we had any questions about why we were out doing work.
It seems like such a long time ago now. That term essential business and essential worker was like part of our daily vocabulary. And you just saying that, I don't know if that brings back good memories or bad memories, but yeah, I remember having the same conversations at our lumber yard. We are essential, but at the same time, we had an office. I
Yeah.
have an office with a lot of people indoors. And it's like, yeah, we're essential, but this is freaking me out a little bit.
Hmm.
So let's go back. I'm curious what your memory this sawmill when you were a kid that showed up. Do you have any recollection of what kind of sawmill it was? And like, give me an idea. When was this? Like 1980s, 1970s, 90s?
No, this was in I think the mid 90s, like around
Okay,
97, 98. So not super long ago.
right.
There was a wood miser. The guy is still in business.
Oh, that's
He
cool.
was kind of a family friend of my dad's. Um, but when I was young, I just remember it being this big, massive orange portable sawmill.
Right.
Um,
It's interesting because I have a similar story that goes back a bit further into the late 70s. We were stationed on an Air Force base in Alabama, and this guy like showed up at my neighbor's house to cut down a tree and started milling it into logs. And at the time, I didn't know. I was probably 4 or 5, and it was in my memory, I have to really kind of dredge it up. But knowing what I know now, I know that it was a circular mill, big rubber tire circular mill, and it was literally just two big like tractor tires, some kind of carriage. It had a long axis on it, and then just a big old circular saw blade. And like a
wow.
motor hanging off the side. And they like leaned it so just the two wheels, and it would like drop down at an angle, and they would kind of push the log up the ramp. So it kind of acted as like a simple machine because it provided that ramp for you. But the guys were out there with, they were probably can hooks. I can't be totally positive, but I mean, the scariest thing. I mean, I remember being fascinated but terrified at the same time because those circular saw blades are enormous, and there was
Hmm.
no fairing or housing or anything around it. There was just like an arbor and a big old motor and this giant blade. And these guys were just kind of pushing it up this ramp by hand into this giant blade. So yeah, the tech has changed a bit, I think. And that may have been that. Who knows? Alabama in the late 70s, it was a different time. But yeah, I could. That was my first memory of a mobile mill, and it was absolutely terrifying. It was like, reminiscent of like, you know, Wile E. Coyote cartoons or something. It might have been the Acme company that made that sawmill. You never know. So yeah,
Yeah.
things have changed a bit. So
Yeah.
today, you have 3 mills now, correct? Is that what you told me?
We do. We have a wood miser LT50,
Hmm.
which is our main portable mill. That was the first one that we purchased. Um, and then we have a wood miser LX250, which is not manufactured to be mobile, but we purchased an extra long trailer, kind of a narrow size but long equipment trailer,
Okay.
made it mobile. And then we have a Lucas slabbing mill.
Oh yeah. Those are kind of interesting because that's more of like set it up around the log, right? Like it series, almost like the carriage itself. You set up like the frame, and the carriage runs over top of the log. Am I getting that right? Lucas is a
Correct.
brand
Yeah,
I know of but don't look at a lot.
and we got that because we did a lot of chainsaw mill work, like Alaskan style, I guess you could call it.
Yeah, yeah, and that's actually kind of almost like it grew out of the Alaskan. It's like an Alaskan mill with a lot more stuff to it. Same kind of
Yeah,
idea, like a
we
carriage.
myself and a worker or a couple helpers would be using this Alaskan mill all day, day after day, and it just got so it was taxing on you. It was
Hmm.
hard work, and we just decided since we're getting into this so much, it'd be better to get something a little bit more designed for the larger logs. that are too big to move with a crane or anything. So that's why
Sure.
we went down that road.
So let's, I guess, capacity wise, I mean, I know the LX50, that's a nice one. Hydraulic and all kinds of, makes things a little bit easier to move around. But what's the capacity on that?
The 50 is 35 inches,
Okay.
34, 35. We made a little modification in the throat design to be a little bit more stable for the guide arm. So that shrunk the capacity by an inch. So right now we're at like 34 inches.
Still, that ought to handle the majority of the stuff you run into. And then, of
Mm-hmm.
course, your Lucas, I mean, is there a capacity? I mean, I suppose, yeah, there is a capacity, but you said it was a 108. So is that its capacity? 9 feet?
Yeah, 108 inches. Yep.
Wow.
And then you can get rails to make it unlimited length. But right now
Right. Yeah.
we're only set up for 20 feet long.
Interesting. That really opens things up quite a bit. And then the Wood Miser, that one I am pretty familiar with. We have a similar model to that at my yard. Yeah, and it pretty much just sits on the ground. But you've then put it on a trailer and essentially turned it into an LT50. In other words, something along that line. But that one's a little bit bigger, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I spoke with a couple guys at Woodmiser and asked them, is there any reason why the length is not unlimited on this? Because the advertisements say um, it comes at, I think, 13 and a half feet,
Mm-hmm.
the standard bed. You can get one bed extension to make it 18 feet. Um, but the design of the actual mill is the same as their other mills that are labeled unlimited length. So we talked about it, and it boiled down to the welds and the actual structural design was not um, purposed for logs that would be 50 inches in diameter and 30 feet long.
Mm-hmm.
A log that big is going to be thousands of pounds. So um, the welds are not designed to hold that amount of weight. So they limit you the weight of the log by the length of the bed.
Right. Yeah.
So before we had that mill, we had an LT15 standard, which was 28 inches wide, max cut. And I had a couple bed sections made by a local welder, and we would mill 40-foot long beams for customers that wanted them.
Wow.
Um, but when you have a 40-foot long tree, it's almost a given that every time it's going to be larger than 28 inches in diameter.
Yeah. They don't stand up real well when they're skinny at that length.
No, so that combination wasn't working for us. Um,
Wow.
so we are set up now with this LX 250 to cut 40 feet long, but the biggest diameter log that we ever put on it's maybe 36 at max.
Yeah.
So we don't have to worry about that weight and jeopardizing the structure at all.
Mm-hmm. It's an interesting, good combination of a good nest of tools there. In other words, you pretty much can handle anything that gets thrown at you. So, what's the typical kind of stuff? What are the species you're running into on a daily basis up there?
In this area, I would say 50% of what we cut is some type of oak,
Mm-hmm.
red oak, white oak, rock, pin oak,
Yeah.
lots of different varieties in this area. And then the next thing that we cut a lot of is black locust. There's a ton of black locust around here.
Yeah. It's pretty invasive.
And yeah, and in this area, people are really starting to realize the benefits of using it, like the variety of things it can be used for.
Mm-hmm.
And we're trying to encourage that. We do sell some retail a little bit. We keep a small stock in our yard to
Okay.
sell out of. And usually, anytime we cut black locust, it sells that same week. As soon as people hear that we have it or drive past and see that we have it, it sells very quickly.
How interesting. It's kind of because I've certainly talked about it on the show before. Because it's such an invasive species, it's not universally accepted around the U.S. anyway. In fact, there are some states where they do not allow it to be planted.
Mm-hmm.
But Yeah, people who start to use it, and I've used it in the traditional fence post application. That's how you see so much of the black locust now. It's essentially narrower trees that have just been debarked a little bit, and you've got a round fence post, and they're fantastic in that capacity. But I've started to see people starting to mill it into decking a little bit more. It's been turning into siding applications. So yeah, it's starting to gain a lot of prominence. There's just not much in the way of commercial infrastructure around it. So it's like as soon as it were to become like popular, we'd run out. and and
Yeah.
and I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing. I think that will actually protect the black locust. That the infrastructure is not as unified, but yeah, certainly where you can find lots of it, people tend to be really excited about it. I get a lot of phone calls about black locust day in and day out.
Yeah, I should say that it's fairly available. It's very common in this area, but
Hmm.
good quality locust logs can be kind of difficult to find around here. For example, we were working with a local logger trying to get some locusts for a job, and he said he's taking down this big stand of logs, and he estimated he could have a bunch of 30-foot long logs, quite a few of them, and he let me know when they're ready he could bring them over. And he texted me a few days later and said that they were all bad inside, all full of ants, black ants, rotten.
Wow. Oof.
So it's hard to tell with a lot of trees, not only locusts, but a lot of softwood in this area too. It's hard to tell what the quality is until they're down. You can look inside the log.
Right. What a shame. So you mentioned you have like kind of a small retail operation. Tell me a little bit about your physical operation. I mean, certainly one of the reasons I wanted to bring you on the show was to talk about when you go to people, but obviously you've got somewhat of a home base. What's your yard like, and what do you do at the yard, or do you is the intention to go and mill as close as you can and then bring it back to a yard? How do you differentiate those two sides of the business, I guess?
Um, well, our yard is mainly used for kind of backup stock. Um,
Okay.
if people have something that they're looking for, like locust decking or white oak decking, or we'll do some air drying, we'll let some stuff sit around, and where we're set up, people could drive by and they'll see all the stacks of lumber. And we get, I would say, 60% of our business is from people just driving by and coming down
Mm-hmm.
from the road and buying just a few slabs, one slab, one board at a time, which can be kind of difficult if we're down there cutting. Um,
Right.
it kind of breaks the day up a little bit. But our main work, I would say 90% of our work is the mobile milling of it.
Sure.
We
So
mainly started to build a stock up to use for ourselves, and then I thought we're never going to use all this, so as people come, we'll just start selling it.
so then what do you actually mill? You just said people come by and you're in the middle of cutting. What are you actually milling then back at home base?
These are logs that that customers want cut,
Mm-hmm.
and we have one price to go out and do mobile work. And a lot of times, if we have additional equipment that we have to bring, we have a little all-terrain forklift we can take with us. Um, these are some things that might add to the price of a day of milling at their location. But if they're able to get the logs to us, if they're not very far away, a lot of customers will have a dump trailer or a friend with a dump trailer. If they can get the logs to us, it's more economical for them
Okay,
for us to cut it at our location.
that makes sense. So then let's talk about the kind of the typical mobile sawing engagement. How does it happen? Are they primarily? Well, I mean, I guess it's kind of mostly homeowners, I would think, right? That you're dealing with.
Yeah, about 80%, 75, 80% are homeowners.
Okay,
hmm
and they call you up and say, "I've got a tree that you're doing the felling, or has already been felled."
We have felled trees, I think, only on. maybe 2 or 3 jobs that we've ever been on.
Okay, that's what I thought.
So
So
most of the jobs are the logs are down, or the
yeah,
trees are down in the logs, and we just pull up. Yep.
and is there? I mean, is that somebody took it down, or storm damage, or I guess a little bit of everything?
That's kind of a mix, 50-50.
Okay.
Um, Sometimes people have a tree that, for safety factors, like you mentioned before, they want to take it down
Mm-hmm.
and they don't want to waste it, so they want to turn it into something. Um, Other times it's a storm damage, trees come down, or it's amazing. A lot of times there's a tree on somebody's property that has been down for years, and they're basically sick of looking at it, and they think, "Hey, I could use this for something, so we should get it cut up."
That is interesting because again, I've done a show on this. You know, a lot of people are under the impression that when the tree goes down, it's like the clock is ticking. And maybe in some instances, in some species, and certainly some climates, that can be true. But you know, I personally visit a lot of lumber yards that have log yards of just logs that have been there. You know, and there's several distinctive ones, and it's like that log's been there for 5 years at least. I remember seeing that 5 years ago when I was at this lumber yard or whatever. And I've had a lot of people who've said the same thing. Like I've had this tree that's been down in my yard and I'm tired of cutting the grass around it because that's really what it becomes. It's this thing that they have to mow around and weed whack around, and maybe one day I'll do something with it. Do you find when you've had that situation, is the actual sawing a different process? Is there a lot more waste involved at that point?
It does depend on the species
Mm-hmm.
that the log is.
Sure.
I'm looking at a picture right now of a large maple log that we cut for a customer, and it was back in his woods, and he wanted to make a table out of it, and it it was down. I want to say he said for at least 15 years.
Oh my goodness.
It is a big, big maple, massive tree, probably 45, 50 inches from what I remember in
Wow.
diameter. But the grain was incredible, just loads of spalting. It was beautiful, and there was some pockets of rot here and there.
Right.
We recommended that he take it to a fellow that we have recommended in the past down in Warwick, New York, for doing the actual construction of the table, and it turned out beautiful, very very nice piece.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, there's
so
something to be said about
maple we cut
spalting.
a lot. Yeah, maple we cut a lot of like that. Oak doesn't really gain anything as it sits.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you don't hear too much of spalted oak or
No.
anything like that. But birch is another one that will cut a fair amount that's older. But mainly maple and then some ash too can gain a lot of neat character as it sits.
Right. So it seems to me there might be, from your perspective as a business owner, it would be really good for you to know who the tree removal companies are in the area, especially because that's not really your specialty. And frankly, I don't blame you. That's dangerous work. But I also feel like there might be some kind of conflict as more and more of these tree removal companies are thinking maybe we should get into milling, or the opposite. It's a lot harder to fell, you know, a tree in one big part. Most of the time, they want to come out and kind of, buck it and take it down slowly. Or some instances, they have no choice because of underground lines and things like that. Or access means they can't really get a crane in there, and it's to safely fell the entire tree so that it can be sawn into logs. Well, it can be a lot more expensive. So do you run into a lot of conflict in that particular instance? Maybe conflict
We
is a bit
have,
harsh, but
yeah, and you're right about those things. So, for instance, if we go and quote to mill these logs that the tree is still standing, and the customer tells us that they just had a tree company come out, they're going to take this down. My first question to them is, did they mention that they're going to mill it?
yeah,
That we're going to come in after, because that will affect the price. If they know that if we discuss it with the homeowner will kind of mark things out as the tree stands, so they have an idea in mind, and they pass those measurements or dimensions on to the tree service. That's going to affect their price most likely.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm speaking from personal experience here. I had a Norwegian spruce, big old tree. We were talking before the recording. My house was built in '66. This was in the yard when the house was built, so it's probably an 80 to 90-year old spruce. And I was thinking, man, I could make a lot of Windsor chair seats out of that bowl, if nothing else. And there were huge knots where there were branches over the years that have been cut back, but it was clear, maybe starting above the buttress, the root bulb at the bottom, to a clearer section, to the first branching for the first kind of knots where they were pruned back was about 12 feet. And, I began talking to the tree removal guys and said, look, I don't need you. I just need you to take it down and leave it. I'm going to take it from there. But my price, I think, went up $500 just because,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's a huge mass to have to fell. Unfortunately, I don't have any buried lines or anything like that. The pipes are further enough down. They had to do, surveys to make sure of all that stuff. But yeah, it cost me, because I think it was like a $2,200 job total. So
Yeah,
25% of it, was because it would have been 25% cheaper had I just, no problem, do whatever you got to do. And I'm sure that they would have, bucked it into sections and taken it down. So it's kind of a
yeah,
big deal. And the
yeah,
customers got to make sure that they're communicating that at the same time to their tree removal company, especially those customers that, maybe like you said, they can get it to you and they can save a little bit of money that way. They may think they're saving money, but they need to talk to the tree removal guys because they might have just spent more getting the tree felled.
yeah, exactly. And in this area, it's not, you don't hire a tree removal company and they leave with everything cleaned up like they were never there. There's different levels of service. So
Right.
um, just because a customer is having a tree removal company come in and cut this tree down, are they going to move it in place to have us come in, pull the sawmill up, and just cut the logs, or are they going to leave the logs all spread out? What's the property going to look like when they leave? So
Yeah. Right.
that's another thing that will encourage customers to kind of communicate with the tree guys to stage the logs or to not to stage them. And because of that, we got in the habit of working with two tree guys in particular that we got to know pretty well. And they got used to how we kind of liked things when we would show up to mill logs. If they knew we were coming, they would do certain things for us in advance. That way, we wouldn't have to do them. We wouldn't have to charge the homeowner to do them if they already have equipment there moving logs around.
So let's talk about that. What are those things specifically? Like how? Let's just put it from the perspective of, ideally, what would it look like when you show up to make your job easiest?
Um, so our area, I had a little printout map that I would pass on to customers, new customers particularly, that would show an outline of the truck that we would pull the mill with, the actual sawmill. It would have dimensions on that,
Mm-hmm.
the total length of the unit, and then kind of how we would stack things around the sawmill during the milling process,
Okay.
and then where the logs would be staged when we would get there. So most every job I prefer to go there and look at it before we take the mill, just
Sure.
because it saves so much time. If you could pass on one or two pieces of information, such as like the levelness of the milling site.
Oh yeah.
If we get there on site and look at it, and the homeowner was thinking to put the logs at one location, but there's on the other side of the property, there's another place that might work even better. Just that little small change could make a whole day of milling go so much smoother.
Interesting. Yeah. So
So
it's a lot of clearance, but also like where you're actually setting up the mill, and how far do you have to move the log to get it onto the carriage? How far do you then have to move the slices, the boards? All that
Hmm.
stuff really adds up over the course of a day of milling. That's interesting.
Yeah. And the best thing for somebody to do if they're looking to have somebody come and do mobile milling for them is to ask the sawyer, what are the details that I need to know in
Mm-hmm.
order to set these logs up? Because just because we have one style equipment, um, other sawyers might not have that same style. So
Right.
small details might not matter to them, or things that don't matter to us might matter more to them,
Interesting. Yeah.
if that
Good
makes
point.
sense.
No, it does. Absolutely. So yeah, if I'm somebody that is thinking, okay, I'm going to have a guy come out and mill these logs, first and foremost, I would be a little concerned if that sawyer did not come out first, without the mill, just to kind of assess things. But say they don't, then it's a matter of, okay, what do, as you said, what do I need to know? How can I best stage the property for you? Or, be asking questions about what kind of access do you need and all that.
Hmm.
Good to know. And I would imagine if you, as the homeowner or the owner of the tree is thinking, man, I don't have a lot of room. It's probably one of those things where you want to encourage that sawyer to make a visit and make sure that they can do what they can do, before they show up. And more than likely, a decent sawyer is probably already thinking that anyway. And as you had said, it's kind of cool to have that nice visual, the map you were talking about. It's
Yeah.
kind of a neat idea, especially if you have something like that digitally that you can send to a customer, during the initial phone conversations and email to say, look, this is the space that we need. That's a good idea. Nice idea there.
Yeah, usually if they're on the phone, if we're talking on the phone,
Yeah.
sometimes even while we're there, I'll email it or text it to them,
Right.
and they can look at it right away. And if red flags show up during that conversation, like, oh, I didn't realize it was so long, um, then that tells me I need to get out there and look at it
Right.
sooner than later.
Sure. Well, I suppose that's where you could also bring your other wood miser to bear, since it's on a
Hmm.
trailer. It's a little bit, well, yeah, I don't know whether that would make much of a difference now that I think about it. But possibly that could be an opportunity. If you also have a customer that doesn't have the ability to move it. Sounded
Yeah.
like maybe that guy had the maple out in the woods, was maybe in that type of situation. Maybe that's where you bring the Lucas mill to bear or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Our design for our business, and this might come up later. Sorry if I'm jumping ahead, but
No?
we mainly, when we started getting into the sawmill business, we had the idea of anything that could come up, we would have the ability to mill, no
Nice.
matter where the location is, what the type of wood it is, the size of the wood, where it's located on the property. Any combination of factors, we could in some way get that milled.
Sure.
Because in this area, there's a lot of sentimental milling. A lot of people have things milled that they or want to have things milled for a family reason, personal reason, something. So it doesn't really matter where that log is or other factors involved. They just want it cut into something.
Right. So let's talk about the actual cutting, or maybe pre-cutting. You had said earlier, you'll go out, the tree's still standing, and you'll kind of mark it out and see, that initial survey of things. Tell me a little bit about that process, and let's look at it from a couple of perspectives. Probably the more common, you have a customer that knows they want to do something with it, but maybe don't know specifically what they want to do with it, or maybe just aren't, maybe they're not a woodworker, and maybe they're just getting it milled into boards and they're going to send it to a woodworker to build something. And then the other extreme, which might be the worst, is the woodworker who suddenly has a lot of very specific things that they want. I want this rift, and I want this corded, and I want a slab here, and I want, free of heart pith cant beams, and kind of timber frame and all that stuff. So how do you let's look at the first situation where sentimental is probably the best way to put it. You have a customer that really doesn't know. They just know they want to do something with it. How do you
Mhm.
approach that, and kind of what's your process for the most efficient yield, or maybe that's not even the goal. The most successful engagement, I guess, would be the way to put it.
Yeah. The first thing I try to find out is what they if they want to do anything with it, like
Yeah,
what their end goal is.
sure.
If they don't really have one, of course, when I see a tree, I immediately start thinking of things that you could use certain portions of it for,
Right. Yeah.
which I don't want to put that influence on them if they have different ideas.
That would be
Um,
hard for me. I
yeah,
admit to that freely. I'm seeing a chair. I'm seeing a table. There's a bed over there. It would be really hard as I'm cutting that, going, "Oh man, this is my headboard. I'm cutting in half right now." That would be
yeah.
tough.
I mean, if they're looking for ideas, then I'll be all about sharing it with them
Yeah.
and putting the things out there. But if they're really set on something, then we need to work with that because that's what the customer wants. So,
Right.
um, and you might have to tweak it a little bit. There might be a different portion of the tree that would be better for that. Like if somebody wants uh, a big slab for a table, um, but one part of the tree is just so massive, immediately everybody thinks of um, a main slab for a table coming out of the first couple logs. But sometimes those logs are just so big, it doesn't make sense to because nobody wants a 55 or 60-inch wide table.
Yeah. Really
So
good point.
it might make sense to get that out of a different portion of the tree and glue some pieces together, or um, get that main slab out of the bottom of the tree and then cut the center out. Or the key is just finding out what they want to do with the wood,
Right.
if anything.
So how do you go about assessing the log itself? And I know that there's a lot of art to this, but you had said earlier, like sometimes you just don't know until you cut open the log. So there's always going to be that question mark until you really start cutting it. You don't know what's really in there. But as you're whether you're looking at a down log or a standing tree, what are you kind of looking for to start thinking how I'm going to go about cutting this?
It's all based on, again, what the customer wants.
Okay, good to know.
If if one of our customers wants a lot of flooring, end result flooring made,
Right. Yeah.
and there's real squirrely branches, it's not going to make very good flooring. If it has a lot of twists in it, branches coming out of it, and the yield is going to be horrible.
Right.
So we would recommend to them to maybe get some slabs out of that for floating shelves, or um, bar stool tops, or um, something other than, unfortunately, what they're looking for. Which
Right.
that's
Yeah. Narrow, skinny pieces that are going to
Yeah,
twist and check and
and I
go
say
nuts.
that, and I say that hoping that some other part of the tree can yield exactly what they're looking for. And
Right.
95% of the time, we can get what the customer wants out of the tree.
Hmm. Yeah.
So
Ideally, a lot of real estate to play with. If you know, like you said, if you know what it is ultimately they want, then you can kind of start to break down your cuts to get to, forgive the expression, the meat of the matter. The flooring of the matter in this particular instance. It's kind of
yeah,
interesting.
and it's pretty rare to have a customer that wants to do this massive project with one or two trees.
Hmm.
So usually, what they want, we can get out of the logs. Um, and like what you mentioned, maybe some logs would yield um, posts or beams better than others, or other logs would make better slabs, not so much finished flooring or finished trim. So usually we can find the right combination of items to get out of the logs per tree to make whatever they want work.
And do you ever have the situations where, I mean, it's their log, so essentially the wood that comes from it is their wood. Do you ever have these agreements where they just need this and this, and there's 30% of the log left over. Do you then say, okay, we take this back to our yard and it becomes our lumber, or you just have that customer, you meet their need, but yet you still have a percentage of the log left over? What do you do in that particular instance?
So some of our customers will have some logs that they want cut, and they'll throw the idea out of a trade. Come
Mm-hmm.
cut this wood for us. You keep half of it. We'll keep the other half. Um, we're not.
And no money changes hands, right? Yeah, no big deal.
Yeah. So I've only done that maybe 2 or 3 times with very unique wood, which I know that we can either use or we can sell, no problem.
Right.
But my answer to most everybody that has that idea is we are so overloaded with wood, and we are. We have huge log piles of wood that some of it will probably never get to mill,
Right.
just because of time. So we're in no way looking for wood. And then I look at that, what they have, and really think about, like, if they let that sit and air dry, what would be the most valuable cuts for them if they wanted to resell that later to recoup some of their cost.
Hmm.
And then we'll start kind of going down that road. I'll make some suggestions to them about what to mill it into for them to possibly sell it
Right.
later.
No, that's nice. That's a good way of looking at it. It is. I do find, in general, uh, people have an inflated sense of what their log is worth, because they don't realize just how much labor is involved downstream. Or
Mm-hmm.
they sometimes just have no concept of the waste factor. They see this huge tree and think there's a lot of boards in there, and like in the instance of the black locust you were talking about, it could be ants in the middle of it, and nothing,
Yeah,
there's nothing really much in there. But they also just have this idea that, okay, well, I've got this big stack of boards, so I looked up my local lumber yard and they're selling those boards for $5 a board feet. It's like, no, it's not quite the same. You might be
yeah,
looking fractions of a dollar per board foot, because it's perfectly green lumber. It can't be graded, and there's so many things that go into that. I get a lot of phone calls at my yard where people just, I have this log and I want to sell it to you, and you have to say, look, that's just not what we do. I mean, although technically we have the sawmill now, we could, but it just, like you say, we got enough lumber. I have 8 million board feet of lumber on my yard right now. I'm good. Okay.
yeah.
And if it is something really, really unusual, that could be something worthwhile. But yeah, it's rare that comes up. Although I am curious, what would you consider to be unusual and make it worth your while?
Mainly the size of things,
Okay.
not so much the species, but if you have kind of a unique or sought after species, in addition to the size, that's even better.
Sure.
But if you have just any type of oak, any poplar, um, pretty much any maple, but the size is there to make it something, a big slab table, which is in this area what people really, really like.
Right.
That would be unique to me.
Interesting. I was kind of wondering if that's the direction you were going to go, because certainly you're going to run into unusual species, but more often than not, they're ornamental yard trees, and
Yeah,
and the yield could be just awful. You know,
yeah.
you could make turning blanks out of it maybe if you're lucky. But so let's go to the other extreme. I give you a call and I have, well, let's just say I have a glorious sycamore in my backyard, and I love the tree. I do admit the leaves are enormous, and this time of year it is a lot of work. But man, the shade that it gives me during the summer, my house is so much cooler than my neighbors who don't have that sycamore tree. But I do know that unfortunately the time is probably coming. The tree has anthrax. Its leafing cycle is completely off at this point. It's growing very close to the power lines. My local utility is constantly saying, we need to cut this back and cut this back. In fact, they just came by yesterday and cut off a big branch that was too close to it. But I know that like the time is going to come and I'm going to want to mill that. And sycamore is a particular species that, it makes incredible quarter sawn ray fleck, like almost this lacewood looking wood. So I know a lot about wood. I know, a lot of how I would use it, but it's also an enormous tree that I could call you up and I can't really say, I'm going to make this, and this. But
Mhm.
I would tell you, look, I'm a woodworker. I make furniture. I want to get kind of the best yield for furniture type parts, so and that could actually be easier because furniture type parts, a typical lumber yard is 6 to 8 inches wide, FAS lumber. But
Mhm.
I would hope, me personally, I wouldn't be this way, but I could see a lot of people who would want to get very involved in how it's milled and the thickness we're going for, and I want it all quartered and I want it all rift, or I want, X amount of rift and really, really detailed. So maybe I'm wrong, but kind of a nightmare of a customer. So how do you handle that type of situation, and what's the best way for, there are a lot of woodworkers listening to this podcast who are probably thinking very much like I am. What do you think would be the best way for that type of person to engage with a mobile sawyer? That was a big
Yeah,
question. Sorry.
no, that can be kind of difficult, and um, they own this tree, and it's up to
Right.
them to have it cut into whatever they want. That's true, but we can't get things that are not possible out of it, like the volume or the quantity.
Right.
So the the experience that the sawyer has, he'll be able to look at it um, if he's, I shouldn't say qualified enough, but if he has enough of the enough experience, and just be honest with you. Is
Right.
this even possible?
Sure.
We'll have some customers that every so often they'll number the amount of certain boards and posts and the way they want it cut out of these logs.
Really.
And you look at it and you don't know exactly what you're going to get out of it until you're looking at it as a finished stack of lumber.
Yeah.
So
So
that
like,
can be
are they
kind of
marking like
difficult.
on the end grain? Like, that sounds a bit too.
Sometimes that will happen, but most of the times they'll supply a list um, of things like a cut list.
Okay, that's a step further than I
So
was even imagining. Okay. Wow.
yeah,
Okay.
and you don't want to burst their bubble with it, but we most of the time their thinking, if they have experience in woodworking, their thinking isn't too far off from what we can actually get from it.
Okay.
So a lot of times we can get 70% of that list out of it.
Hmm. It's pretty
But
good.
again, the species might affect that also.
Sure.
Like if we're cutting a lot of walnut and somebody doesn't want sapwood in the walnut finished material, that has a huge bearing on after you start cutting it, what like how thick the sapwood even is.
Yeah. Yeah. And you'll never know. And well, I mean, if the tree's felled, ideally, maybe you can look and see. But that's interesting. And I can imagine like go to Google and Google, quarter sawn or rift sawn, and immediately those diagrams, like the cross section of a log, and here how a board is radially sawed. Here is a board that's quarter sawn, and you see, like
Yeah,
Tetris, the stacking of the boards on the diagram. And I know there's a lot of people probably they look at that log and that's immediately what they're thinking. They're thinking those diagrams that the various sawmills and things have put out on the internet, and thinking I'm just gonna stack my boards in here and get this perfect. I've got this little space here, so I'm gonna get a 2 inch wide quartered board out of that, and I suppose
yeah,
that can be helpful. That might actually be more helpful than the guy that has no idea what he wants to do with it, right? At least you have some guidelines to work to.
yeah. There's kind of a happy medium because the best list that we can be given as sawyers is if somebody comes and they say they have these 20 logs, they want 50% of it cut into one measurement, say 25% in another measurement, 10% in here, 10% into here. And that gives us a little bit of room to actually make some judgment calls during the milling process based on the shapes of the tree, the quality of the wood.
Right.
So
I would think that it would be difficult to, for the customer that is saying, I want some rift, I want some quartered, and the rest you can just flat saw. Because you can't really change sawing method like halfway through. I mean, I suppose you can cut the whole thing in half and flat saw one half of it, and then quarter the other half and saw that way. But you can't really. There's such different ways of approaching sawing a tree. I don't know. Am I wrong in that? It feels like it would be difficult to change. I want some quartered boards here, and I want flat or through sawn here. Does it work that way? Am I being? I'm not a sawmill runner, so.
no, no, you're right. So if you have a log that pretty close, we could look at it and determine that this log would make really nice quartered wood.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but if the I should say it the opposite way, it would make really nice slabs
Mm-hmm.
because of the character of the side, the live edge.
Sure.
But if the customer wants everything quartered, their quality of the quartered wood is not going to be very good. And if they have that list that they gave you, you have to determine whether to give them something that once they see it, they would be happy with it because of the character.
Right.
If they're not going to be happy because they don't have as much quartered wood
Sure.
as what they wanted. So that can kind of slow down the process because you end up contacting them if they're not around, just not to upset them or get their permission before you do it. You end up contacting them through the job, which can kind of slow things down.
Right. Yeah, I have to wonder though, like, and again, just speaking personally, like back to the sycamore, I feel like it would still be best to just through saw the whole thing, knowing that once I have a slab, and if we're sawing them into 8 and 10 quarter thicknesses so that I can get them to, hopefully season without completely cracking and warping apart. But there's so much more as a woodworker you can do with a slab than a
Mm-hmm.
bunch of narrower quarter sawn boards. I mean, you can still get quarter sawn out of a slab. Go to either side of the pith or, the center of the tree, the center cathedral, and you're going to have rift and quartered flanking it. So it just seems
Mm-hmm.
like to me you've got a lot more options that way than going straight to quarter sawing this and ending up with narrower boards and possibly a lot of much narrower boards, and you might lose some of that character of the overall tree because you're cutting out these little swatches, if you will, from the overall thing. I feel like the best way to do it is to yield the best yield, which to me is through sawing. You can
Yes.
you get both live edges, and then there's so many decisions that can be made, frankly, easier because it can be made with typical woodshop tools, right? I can take, even if it's a 10 or 12 quarter slab, you can still do a lot with that on a table saw. It's heavy, no doubt, so maybe a circular saw would be better than a table saw, but at least that person can do that, whereas they can't do that from a log. Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
answering
and
my own
that's
questions here as I talk, but
no, and that's what we tell the customers. Once a tree is cut into a smaller size, that's what you have. That's what you're stuck with.
right. Unless you have glue,
So
you can't do much with it,
yeah,
Yeah.
so especially if they're kind of undecided on what they want to do with it, we kind of lean towards slabs or smaller posts,
Yeah,
something that they can always cut down later.
sure. So let's talk. What has been what's been your favorite job or most unusual job?
Most unusual, I would say, we have one customer down in New Jersey,
That's
and
unusual.
He is, yeah,
Those Jersey people. Ooh.
super, super nice customer, very nice family. But his wife is very sick, and
Hmm.
he is going to be retiring in about 3 years now. So he's setting himself up for retirement to be home with her.
Mm-hmm.
And we have cut, I would say, 25, 20 to 25,000 board feet worth of all different kinds of material, any species that we can find around here. He'll collect up and he'll send to us. We'll mill it, we'll air dry it for a little bit at our place, and then we would deliver it down to his place and stack up. And he's going to have a full stock to work from during retirement, to sell wood from or to work from. He is setting up a wood shop right now.
Wow. That's some long-term planning right there. That's fantastic.
Yeah, and it's like I said, any type of species he can find that he can picture working with, and all different sizes. And we're cutting them into slabs. A lot of quarter sawn oak, um, all different kinds of cuts.
Where is he getting the logs?
Anywhere he can find.
Interesting.
He'll he'll be driving past tree services that are taking trees down. He'll stop and he'll make an arrangement. He'll send me to go. He'll send us to go pick them up, bring them to our place, cut them for him,
Hmm.
or he'll contact people on Facebook, Craigslist, all kinds of places.
Yeah, I might have had this conversation with a couple of guests in the past. They're kind of everywhere, logs. I mean, once you actually start looking and noticing, you start to see them everywhere. And it's usually just a matter of stopping and having a conversation. A lot of these tree removal guys
Yeah,
would be thrilled to have it go somewhere other than, into the chipper or something like that. Even a couple episodes ago when I had a Garrett on, the Garrett and the Big Red Oak episode, same type of thing.
yeah,
He's driving by and he's like, man, it'd be cool. And all it took was just to knock on the door or send an email, and eventually it happens. Because I do hear from people all the time, like, where do you get the logs? And maybe we've become too much of an internet society where we're just so used to being able to go to Amazon and add to cart. Sometimes you got to go knock on a door or go talk to a person and say, what are you doing with that tree? But
hmm,
they're kind of everywhere. That's really cool. And what a great,
yeah,
like, arrangement. He's got you on retainer almost. I got another log for you, Jacob. Sending your way. That's really cool.
yeah. He'll send me a message saying he has a truckload of cherry coming.
Huh.
So if we have room, stack it off to the side. And every single day, I guess I should say this is our one of our favorite jobs because the family's so nice. And
Hmm.
every day that we would mill wood for him, he would come and help.
That's cool.
So he
Yeah,
would be right there
well,
in
I don't
with us
blame him.
working.
I'd be doing the same thing. This is my retirement stock. That's really cool. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you
Hmm.
get to build a relationship with the guy over the years too. It'll be
Hmm.
really exciting once he does retire and once he actually starts making things to be able to see. Remember that tree that I sent you, 4 years ago or whatever? It's now this table. That would be really interesting.
Hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'll definitely want to stay in touch with that guy once he starts making stuff, just for to see what he makes from it. So I guess to kind of to put a bow on this, I'd be curious, and I'm sorry, I'm going to put you on the spot here, but for someone who is looking to engage the services of a mobile sawyer, what's what are maybe three tips you could give them that would help the job go a little better or prepare? Yeah, just help the whole thing or the whole relationship go a little bit better. Can you think of maybe top three things?
As a customer.
Yes. Well, speaking from the perspective of the sawyer, things that would make your job easier, but would also, turn it into kind of a regular job into a great job. What should the customer know? What are maybe three things the customer should know or do to as they're engaging their sawyer?
I would say probably the first thing would be to um, really think about the whole process of like what a small amount of work the sawing is in the whole process of using the wood.
Hmm. Good point.
For
Yeah.
example, um, let me see, how should I put this? The time that we're there cutting is only 10, maybe 20% of the work involved in getting that wood to the usable state.
Right.
So there's a lot of other work involved. A lot of customers don't realize that they need a place to dry the lumber to stack it. Um, it's amazing how many times we'll cut wood for people, and at the end of the job, they say, "So how long do we have to let this sit to use it?" And they're shocked when you tell them. And that's like what I'm telling them is a super rough estimate. So much has a bearing on where it's stored, the conditions of the weather during the drying process, um, how often you check it, if you have to make any cover changes or protection
Yeah. I
changes
was gonna
during the
say
drying
it's
process.
not a set it and forget it type thing. You know, you don't want to just stack it and come back in 3 years.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah. Really good
So
point.
that's one thing to keep in mind.
Okay.
The other thing would be maybe the possibly the site conditions,
Okay.
um, like where the setup would be. Um, the biggest inconvenience with mobile milling is unlevel ground, in my mind, based on our equipment.
Sure.
So
Well, do you think that's going to vary much from equipment to equipment? Are there mills out there that do a good job on unlevel ground? I don't think so.
uh, not so much unlevel ground, but like for instance, our one trailer is 40 feet long. So
Yeah.
if you have a foot out of level, which is pretty much our max with our LT50, 1 foot out of level within 20 feet. If you go 40 feet, it's 2 feet, which is pretty much impossible.
Yeah.
So um, that would just be something to keep in mind because a lot of customers that we do a lot of milling at our location because their property doesn't yield to having us come on site.
Right. No, that
So they
that makes
really
a lot of
want it to
sense.
work, and we really try to find a way, but it's just not going to.
How often do you like set up on the curb, like in the street, because that's the most level spot?
We've only done that once,
Okay.
and that's I don't prefer to do
I
that
wouldn't think
based
so.
on towns and municipalities.
Right. It
Routine.
just sounds dangerous.
Yeah, you have people walking their dog down the street, and you don't want to get involved with that.
Sawdust flying everywhere into the neighbor's yard. Yeah, that sounds like a nightmare. All
Yeah,
right. Can I drag a third tip out of you?
yeah. I think to have in mind what they're going to do with the scrap, with the waste, the sawdust, um,
Oh, yeah.
the wood scraps, especially if they're in residential areas. So they're going to have this beautiful stack of lumber that they can use, but also what are they going to do with the sawdust and waste? Which our business, we can take that with us. That's one of our things that we offer. If you don't have a place for it or a use for it, you don't have chickens or you don't have a fire pit you can use the waste in, then we can clean all that up at the end of the job and we can take it with us like we were never there.
I mean, and
So
and I think that the next step there is important that they understand that that's a line item on the invoice. Like this is not free. So I mean,
yeah,
certainly that comes into just your initial conversations and the quoting of the whole job and everything anyway. But that's something I was not thinking that at all. Because I guess you kind of just assume, excuse me, like you said earlier with tree guys, the expectation is you'll never know they were there when they're done. Like especially when they do stump grinding, you
mhm.
just have this kind of shallow depression in the ground, and you never knew that anybody was there. That a comes with a cost, or there could be some stuff here that you might want, like, and do you really want it, and what will you do with it? And say it's okay, I want the scraps, I can burn them on my wood stove. where do you want us to put them? Or are you going to move them, or are we going to move them? And how much, again, back to this, your point one, how much time it actually takes. It's not, maybe it's 20% sawing. Stacking could be 50%, depending on what you're stacking. That's
Yeah.
particularly interesting. Yeah. Because there's a
Yeah. And
lot
I
of
know,
stuff, a lot of waste that comes out of that.
yeah, it is. And like you said, a lot of it is good. They can, if they have a little wood shop, once those waste pieces are dried, they
Yeah.
could stand them up on a bandsaw and resaw them and get some stuff out of them, no problem. But they just need a place to put them in the meantime. Um,
Hmm.
and a lot of times they will want the waste. They'll want to use it for something. So
Really?
they
Okay.
just have to keep that in mind.
See, I think there's a whole other like evolution of your business that can come from this. Is you could start like showing up with like spoon knives and say, look, you can make spoons from this stuff, and do a little tutorial on how to carve spoons. Okay, now you've got this huge stack. That's all spoon material. You don't have to let that dry. It's ready to go.
Yeah,
It's
that's
just the
true.
next evolution. Start teaching the kids how to carve spoons, and then while you're sawing the log, they can be telling the homeowner how to make kitchenware out of all this extra stuff.
That's true. And we try to, we don't, I know every sawyer handles it different with their pricing, but we don't have all these different prices for all these things that we can do additionally. It's just a day rate. So
Right.
whatever
Yeah.
you
Good
want
point.
done in the day, that's the price. If you want everything cleaned up, it's a little bit less milling that will get done, but we'll have everything cleaned up and it's the same price.
Yeah. No, I like that. It's a because you're right. It only leaves a bad taste in people's mouths when it's line item after line item after line item. Well, yes, we could do that, but yeah,
Yeah.
good way to put it. And I imagine there's a lot of people who probably do the same because it would just be, the more, well, frankly, the more attention you draw to how much things cost, the more defenses come up and things like that. This
Yeah. And
is
because of that, that has opened up the opportunity for us to offer different things. So
that's nice.
the price doesn't really change, but we can offer to bring stickers with us to stack it for drying. So we'll either leave the material tight stacked when we leave,
Hmm.
or we'll leave it air stacked for air drying.
Now that's
Um,
interesting. I've
if
never
we
heard of that. I mean,
if we stack
we're
it for
I mean, I've never heard of somebody providing the stickers. Certainly, I've heard of air dry dead stacking and sticker stacking, but that's really interesting. Have you found that other people have done the same thing where they've actually brought stickers with them?
not so much, no.
I haven't either. Maybe I'm just naive in this instance, but and I've heard of guys who actually make stickers from some of the sawn material. Maybe they'll take a little section left over and they'll saw it into stickers to help with the actual stacking. But most of the people I know who've had this done, it's been a dead stacked pile when the sawyer leaves.
Yeah, so if we show up and there's 50 logs to mill,
Yeah,
we tell the customer that these 50 logs are going to take maybe 2 days to cut, um, just tight stacking. But
yeah,
if we're going to cut these and sticker stack them, it's going to be roughly twice as much time.
yeah. I'm so glad you said that because on my yard we have a whole building that's called the stacker. That's all it does. It runs boards across, lays them out in one length, and we do a kind of initial tally. And then we have three guys who do nothing but sticker stack all day. And they have, lifts and conveyor belts and all kinds of like automation built into that. But it is incredibly time consuming to sticker stack
Hmm.
if you want to do it right anyway. Yeah, that's a really interesting point. But still, what a
Yeah, and
great service to offer that because nothing will make lumber go bad faster than a dead stack. Green lumber
yeah,
dead
we
stacked in the middle of the New York summer. That could be
yeah
ugly.
we tell customers that after it's tight stacked, milled and tight stacked, you have about a week to get it sticker stacked,
Yeah.
at most.
Hmm.
And you're going to have roughly, if it took us a day to mill it, you're going to have at least a full day in stacking all this.
Yeah. And a sore back.
Yeah,
Plan on
and
the
a
sore
sort of,
back. Interesting. Well, this has been fascinating. So, Jacob, how do people learn more about your business? How will they Say they're in the Hudson River Valley area and they need something sawn. How can they find you and give you a call?
So I think Woodmiser has a tab on their website to look up local sawyers,
They do.
punch in your zip code, um, or I think you can put in any town in the Hudson River Valley area, and we would come up. There's a few others in the area. Most of the other sawyers in this area are stationary.
Hmm.
They don't do a lot of mobile work, but um, then the other, we're on Instagram. We don't have a website. I don't think we would have. Mainly, we don't have a website because of timing. We don't have time to keep up a website, so we just, and we're very busy. We don't really need to advertise that way.
Understand?
So,
Yeah.
um,
What's your Instagram account? It's said
say,
underscore cus underscore con. So said custom contracting, essentially. Said cus con.
mhm,
Nice. Yeah, there's some great
yep,
pictures on here. A couple of beautiful shots of some cookies, but I also love some of these slabs that you guys have been milling. Lots and lots of big stacks of lumber. You guys do a lot of sawing.
yeah.
Your
So those,
facility is where now? Like you say, you have some material that is available and people drive by and see it. Where is that?
so this, so our main yard for selling out of is still located in Pine Bush, New York.
Okay,
But we have recently moved to a farm in Walk Hill, New York, which is only about 15 minutes away from Pine Bush.
very nice.
So rather than moving all of that lumber to sell it from Walk Hill, we're just leaving it there in Pine Bush to slowly sell and get rid of.
Hmm.
And then everything's going to be here at Walk Hill at the farm.
That's fantastic. Well, as I said before we started recording, my sister-in-law is up in that neck of the woods, a little bit south of you, but still, I may have to come by and check it out next time on my way up to Maine. It's fascinating stuff that you do, and I'm excited to see that. We got a lot of really good information, I think, because I know a lot of people who have logs, and you know, there are the people that want to saw it themselves, maybe Alaskan mill, but there's so many of them. Kind of like this guy, this customer of yours in New Jersey, that they just want to start building up an inventory of material, and they want to have somebody that they can trust and count on to saw it. So some really good
Yeah.
information, some really good tips for the homeowner slash log owner. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Anything else before we wrap this up?
I don't think so. One other tip that I was just thinking of looking at another photo, and like your last question, those tips for homeowners is if somebody has a log that they don't know if is any good because it's so old,
Yeah.
if they just, if it's really long, if they could cut that log in half and see what the inside looks like, or take a slice off the end,
Right.
cut into it, and you don't have to waste a whole cost of having somebody come out and mill it to see if it's good. You can, homeowner can tell by looking at it and sending a few photos to a sawyer if it's going to be good or not. Even if it's old, years old, laying out in the woods, it can still be a good log to use.
That's a good tip. Excellent. Yeah, you're right. That would save a heck of a lot of time. So there you go, folks. You've heard it. You've got that log. Go take a slice off of it. See what you learn. If nothing else, it can be fascinating. As a wood nerd, I just
Oh
love to
yeah,
look at that stuff and see just how the tree grew and all the fun stuff that comes out of it. Excellent. Well, Jacob, thank you so much for your time. This has been really interesting, and I think people will enjoy hearing from you on this topic. So, yeah,
yeah.
if
Thank you, Shannon.
it's been an absolute pleasure. If anybody is up in the Hudson River Valley and needs some sawing, you know who to call at this point. So,
Thank you very much. We'll have customers that contact us that are not in this area and just
Oh
with
yeah,
questions. And if anybody has any questions like that, just because we're not going to have any, or just because we're not going to be able to work with you, we would still love to talk with you and give you some pointers and tips. So feel free to contact us.
that's great. That's awesome. Good stuff. That's true. One of your best customers is in New Jersey, so that's awesome.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Shannon, very much.
Likewise, it's been a lot of fun.